Welcome, Slayers, to another episode of DARKTIMES, Debriefed. Your behind-the-scenes look at how the ultimate Brawler Royale is being built. DARKTIMES has been in development since 2022 in partnership with Blowfish Studios, a team with deep experience shipping high-quality games. These updates are based directly on the internal development logs. They're raw, unfiltered, and designed to give you a clearer view into what's happening during each sprint. This episode covers the sprint ending on Friday the 8th of August, 2025, and includes build versions 18.6 and 18.7, starting with 3D art and animation. The focus this sprint was on the Huntress selection screen. Previously, her feet were visibly sliding during the idle to step forward transition. That's now been tightened up. The step no longer drifts and blends more naturally into her looped stance. It's a small but meaningful polish pass, especially for presentation in the mode selector and preview screens. Major win. The Huntress now looks far more stable and intentional when previewed by players. Moving to the lead developer. Two main features were tackled this sprint: environment-specific match configuration and dev mode user interface. In version 18.6, server options were being disabled for release builds. Previously, each map environment pulled from a single shared config, but the new setup splits parameters across all four environments: river, ice wall, pit, and training ground. Each now has its own match duration, number of lives, and spawn behavior. This involved reworking how prefabs are called and separating dev-only options from public builds. Next, the dev game mode UI was updated. A new select match type screen now offers clearer choices for internal testing: ranked, unranked, or dev mode. This UI change also lays the groundwork for public filters down the line. In version 18.7, the match reward logic was revised. All players on the winning team now progress through the round correctly. And in the river and ice wall maps, eliminated players no longer cause logic breaks when the round ends. The major win across both weeks: we successfully rewrote and simplified game mode logic, making the entire match setup more modular and predictable. One blocker remains. There's currently a match filter implemented for the game mode, but the front end doesn't allow filtering by environment yet. That's being scoped for an upcoming sprint. Next, senior developer. This sprint was stacked with environment, combat, and interaction fixes. On throwing, the interruption logic is now behaving correctly. Previously, if a player was carrying someone and got attacked by a zombie, the throw would bug out. Now, interruption by AI correctly forces a drop without breaking the state machine. Execution points also received fixes. In earlier builds, the only executions available were hard-coded for certain characters. Now, thrown player executions work for any combination of characters, opening up full network testing. Next, weapon collisions. Thrown weapons used to bounce unrealistically on the ground. That bounce logic has now been stripped out, so weapons land with proper weight and stop on impact. In version 18.7, team spawns were adjusted in the river map. Players were spawning too close to each other, often on top of enemies. The new logic checks for team affiliation and spacing before assigning a spawn point. Training grounds also received a fix. Previously, all players were receiving rewards regardless of who won. Now, only the victorious team is awarded, and in the river's spike pit, the collider was bugged and wasn't killing players. That's been corrected, and spikes now deal instant death on contact. Major win. The senior developer landed a huge volume of polish fixes, tightening up executions, combat interruptions, spawn logic, and kill zones. No blockers reported. On to back-end development. The leaderboard system was the first priority. Previously, it wasn't pulling correct score data, especially in the training grounds environment. That's now been fixed by decoupling environment logic from the score-fetching service. Matchmaking issues were also addressed. The Unity team had been seeing inconsistent results when calling match creation. Back-end support has now patched the endpoint logic. The most substantial update came in version 18.7. Timed competitive matches are now possible. A new match scheduler was implemented, allowing time-restricted windows for ranked and unranked modes. For example, competitive play can now be enabled only between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. server time. That's fully configurable and lays the foundation for time-based events. Rewards were also corrected. There were bugs last sprint where players received incorrect experience or progress values. These have now been fixed and tested across all environments. Lastly, fleet elasticity. The system now automatically scales server resources to match current concurrency demand. That ensures cost efficiency and uptime during peak hours. The major win here. Back-end infrastructure now supports timed events, elastic scaling, and fully corrected progression. One blocker is still being addressed. Some tech debt from the original matchmaking system is being cleared out, especially legacy endpoint inconsistencies. Game design is next. This sprint focused entirely on balance changes. The designer was limited in scope due to lack of player usage data, but worked with internal feedback to fine-tune zombie health, player attribute scaling, and stamina drain. The updated numbers are being tested internally and appear to be tracking better. Major win, the overall feel of combat and AI pressure is tighter and more rewarding. But the biggest blocker remains. Without consistent player data, tuning these values still relies heavily on gut feel. And finally, QA testing. This sprint covered versions 18.6 and 18.7, with significant testing in Training Grounds and River. In version 18.6, only one ranked match type was selectable with a 2GP entry. That's been flagged. The game mode UI in the dev environment was also tested, with all environment toggles and options working as intended. Not fixed in that build, filtering bugs on the game mode selection screen, and mismatches between UI and backend status. In version 18.7, major fixes included Training Grounds no longer awarding rewards to everyone, River's Spike Pit now functioning correctly, and the dev UI persisting between scenes. Still not fixed. Holding heavy attacks shouldn't trigger the throw animation, but currently does. And heavy weapons still occasionally snap during network sync. Testing notes flagged a few new bugs. The player list widget occasionally shows the wrong usernames. Timers sometimes fail to reset between matches, and some audio stingers aren't firing consistently on match start. Major wins. River is now more stable, and Spike Pit logic is confirmed working. No new blockers reported, but UI logic and heavy attack behaviors remain a focus. Overall, this sprint saw strong polish across match logic, spike kill zones, UI testing, throwing interactions, and network behavior. Next up, continued work on execution variety, spawn fairness, weapon impact physics, and elastic server deployment. Thanks for watching Dark Times Debriefed. To join the conversation, head to discord.gg/darktimes. We'll see you next time, Slayers.